A Picture Book of Amelia Earhart by David A. Adler and illustrated by Jeff Fisher. Amelia Earhart was born in Atchison, Kansas on July 24, 1897. Her parents were Edwin Earhart, a lawyer for a railroad, and Amy Earhart, the daughter of a wealthy judge. Amelia was not a quiet schoolgirl. She threw mud balls, jumped over fences, played baseball and football, and shot her own .22 rifle to rid the family's barn of rats. When she was 7, she made her own roller coaster using fence rails and a pair of old roller skates. Although other girls their age wore long, ruffled dresses, Amelia and Morel Earhart often wore loose-fitting pants called bloomers. The Earhart girls' behavior was shocking to some people, but Amelia wrote later, "Some elders have to be shocked for everyone's now and then." Amelia was 11 years old when she first saw an airplane. It was 1908, 5 years after the Wright brothers made the first successful flight. Amelia wrote that at that time she thought it was just a thing of rusty wire and wood, not at all interesting. After high school, Amelia went to the Ogden's School in Pennsylvania. Amelia was tall and thin. In a letter to her parents from school, she drew a sketch of herself, dressed in a suit with a pleated shirt, and wrote, "I look like a broomstick wrapped round and round." And she wrote, "Did I tell you I have a reputation for brains?" Amelia spent Christmas 1917 with her sister in Toronto, Canada. There she saw soldiers who had returned from the First World War. Years later she wrote, "For the first time I realized what the World War meant. Instead of new uniforms and brass bands, I saw only the results of 4 years' desperate struggle, men without arms and legs, men who were paralyzed, and men who were blind." Soon after the holiday, Amelia quit school. She went back to Toronto, became a nurse's aide, and cared for the war wounded. While Amelia was in Toronto, she went to a nearby airfield and had another look at airplanes. Some years later she explained that though I've seen 1 or 2 at county fairs before, I now saw many of them. After the war, Amelia studied automobile engine repair. The next year she took courses in New York City at Columbia University and Barnard College. At first she was preparing to study medicine. Later she decided to do medicine research. After the school year ended, Amelia went to be with her parents, who had moved to California. On Christmas Day 1920, she went to an air show, and 3 days later she paid $1 for a 10-minute air ride. As soon as I left the ground, she wrote, "I knew I had to fly." In January 1921, Amelia took her first flying lesson. In July, she bought her first airplane. Flying wasn't as safe as it is today. Airplanes were powered by small engines. Amelia had several crash landings. Once she was thrown into an open field. In May 1927, Charles Lindbergh became the first to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. The next year, Amelia Earhart became the first woman to make the flight. She was co-passenger aboard an airplane named Friendship. In June 1928, Amelia, Bill Slovitz, and Clem Gordon climbed into the Friendship. While Slovitz flew the plane, Amelia checked maps and kept a record of their speed and altitude. On June 18, 1928, after 20 hours and 40 minutes in the air, the plane landed in the water in the harbor of Bury Port, Wales. When the 3 flyers returned to New York, they are given keys to the city. They are driven in open cars in a parade down Broadway. People leaned out office windows for a look and threw down confetti to celebrate. Amelia Earhart was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. She was a heroine. Amelia Earhart took off in a red and gold single-engine airplane from Newfoundland on May 20, 1932. She flew through strong winds, heavy rain, and thick clouds, often with the wings and the windshield of her airplane covered with slush and ice, until she landed the next afternoon in the pasture in Northern Ireland. Amelia Earhart had other flying adventures. In January 1935, she became the first to fly from Hawaii to California. With that flight, she also became the first to fly alone across both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. In April, she became the first to fly alone from Los Angeles to Mexico City. In 1937, she planned to fly around the world. When she was told the flight was dangerous, Amelia said, "I've wanted to do this flight for a long time." On June 1, 1937, Amelia Earhart and her navigator Fred Newen began the trip. They flew from Miami, Florida, to San Juan, Puerto Rico. They flew to South America, then to Africa, India, Burma, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, Australia, and New Guinea. They had gone more than 3/4 around the world. On July 2nd, they took off from New Guinea for Howland Island, a tiny island in the vast Pacific Ocean. They never made it back. Amelia Earhart and Fred Newen disappeared somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. There was an enormous search, but they were never found. Before she was lost, Amelia wrote to her husband, "I'm quite aware of the hazards. I want to do it. Women must try to do things as men have tried. When they fail, their failures must be put a challenge to others. Amelia Earhart was America's First Lady of the Year. She was a courageous flyer, a pioneer. She risked her life to prove that in the air and elsewhere women were up to the challenge. She certainly was.